too. All right, so I want to welcome Flo LaVallie uh, to our event, and I'm looking forward to hearing about her life because she's uh, quite a figure in Saskatchewan and has been around for a bit and done some amazing things. And then so I want to hear about her first, and then we'll talk about what she does and its relation to indigenous culture and practices. So, Flo, do you want to tell us about your life? I mean, you were born somewhere, and
Right. I was born in Saskatchewan. My parents came from France. My great grandmother was an herbalist in France. In fact, I have her book in front of me that she wrote in the 1900s. And basically, it's all written in French with all the herbal medicines that are still applicable today. And so I basically continued as I worked in a hospital setting and incurred um, an injury at the hospital, fell down a flight of cement stairs. So as a result, I had to discontinue my workplace in the hospital settings and now what to do. So therefore, I had 3 back operations and was drug addicted. And so therefore, I had to get off of all this medication and went into holistic medicine, did my master's in herbal medicine and set up my practice in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And as a result of that, I've experienced a lot of really, really, I think there were spiritual experiences because of the fact that a lot of those modalities that I work with today are the result of the hardships that I experienced in my own personal life. And so as a result of that, I put that to work. And so I believe that that's why the people that sit in front of me in my clinical setting are the people that basically teach us the way and also have given me a lot of courage to continue my 61 years in healthcare in January of this year. And so I think those are the gifts that we receive as practitioners in Canada and all over the world, because we've all experienced, have had our own experiences. And so now we can help other people. And I've met people like Dr. Mehl-Madrona as well along my way, and I feel that that's another feather in my hat, because people in Saskatchewan still talk about you, Louis, and so they always ask me about saying hello, Louis, And so I think that we have such a connection in Canada and all over the world with different herbal practitioners, and I worked with a physician that once said to me, he said, being a physician is only another skill, another learned skill. And so I think the way we live is how we attract other people. And I've tried to do that on my path. And I think disease has basically led us to the frailties of our own humanity. And so as a result of that, then it's led us to either Western medicine or Eastern medicine or an herbal medicine. And so now I can I know how to identify plants, and the plants have basically are my people.
Mm. And once upon a time, we talked about um, your childhood, which was not easy, I think.
No, no.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you, Louis. I was raised in a convent. I was 6 years old. I couldn't speak English. French was my first language. and math was in Latin. And so I spent my years in my younger years in a convent setting. And so therefore, today I can identify with the residential school survivors. I really relate to the Hutterite community because they live. I understand the way that they feel. I understand the isolation. I understand some of the. I was a bedwetter, and I had to sleep in my pissy sheets, and that was my punishment. And I was basically ostracized by the other children. I was laughed at, and so my self-esteem and self-worth wasn't very. It was I didn't have a good feeling about myself. I was never good enough. I was never good as. And so I really had to do a lot of work on my own emotional, physical, and spiritual health. And so my health is really important to me today. I'm on my 80th birthday soon. And so therefore, I think that, we're all live that the disasters of our life. And I think that in my situation, um, I had to always be better than everyone else, and I could never ever do that. So in that's where addiction, I think, when I had my surgeries, that really fed me. And I dealt with alcoholism. Alcoholism was my go-to once I got off the medication. And then now I've been sober 54, 55 years. And so now I can help other people. I understand drug addiction. I understand alcoholism, and I understand seclusion. And I understand isolation. And so I think that that's basically why people come to see us, Lewis, as practitioners, because I think that we are the examples of the pathological ways of living, and how it led us to dis-ease, which means we're ill at ease with ourselves. And that made me who I am today. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, somehow you managed to find incredible resilience and persevere and triumph over a tremendously difficult beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You
But
know, I wondered, I wonder, it would be fun if we, at another time, if we could do this interview in French. I
great.
was really happy to do that.
Yes. I'm francophone. In fact, yesterday I wrote all my Christmas cards in French and I send them to France. So that keep and I like to we have a lot of francophone people in our community. So I do a lot of my consultations in French. And
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. À la prochaine, nous pourrions conducter l'entrevue en français.
Oui, j'aimerais ça. Et puis, pas rien que ça, mais alors, on, le bon Dieu nous a donné, il a donné tous les herbages pour qu'on s'aide et puis on honore. Et puis alors, les plantes nous parlent et puis ils sont confiés dans nous autres. Et puis alors, c'est pour ça qu'on a appris comment s'en servir.
We better switch back to English for
I
that.
know.
Next time, we'll do it in French. We'll
Yes, we
schedule
know.
a time to do an interview in French, which will
That's
be
true.
really fun.
The other thing that stands out in my mind is the day that you phoned me and you were at the downtown and you had to leave, you left Saskatchewan. And I was really honored that you would confide in me and as a friend, not as a practitioner. And I think that we can do that with each other. It's no different than the College of Medicine as it stands today. I have a relationship with them as well, and I think we have the confidence to be a practitioner, but we also have the confidence to be able to help one another. And I think that is really honorable.
Yes. And I should mention to people that I had to leave Saskatchewan in a hurry because once upon a time I made an illegal U-turn in Arizona,
Right.
and the Canada Immigration Service decided that the equivalent crime in Canada was vehicular homicide while street racing.
But that's a form of bullying. That's a form of it's just not right. And I think that, we as people, need to show other people the way that this isn't the way we conduct our affairs.
Right, right, right. Because, I loved Saskatchewan and I would still be there if
And you
the
were honored here, and you belong here. I even called the tribal council and said, is there a way we can bring him back? And they said yes, on snowshoes.
on snowshoes. I would come back if I could. I would come in a heartbeat if I could.
Yes.
I
Yes.
loved it there.
It's a real connection that we have, and it's so spiritual. And I think that no one in the world, I feel, you belong to us, and I think we belong to you, and I think there's that connection here.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I know that you also have a Métis connection.
Yes, my husband was Métis, and when I first met him, he said he was French. And it's that denial of being Métis, because the Métis people in Saskatchewan were known as road allowance people,
Oh,
because they weren't native, they weren't white, and so therefore they weren't acknowledged as people that basically could even have land. So therefore they lived on the road allowance.
mm.
Yeah, and so my husband always said it's the French and the Irish that really ruined a good race of Indians.
I don't think there's a lot of Irish in Saskatchewan. Is
But
there?
there is some, because
Some.
there's the McDonald, there's the
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They
right.
have SON on the end of them, and so but the denial. And I said, you're not French, you're Métis. And so fine. And his son was doing the same thing, and I said, you have to stop that. So and then of course his mother left when he was 12. His father was in the sanatorium for 4 years, and so there was three sets of twins, and they lived in squalor, and they lived on welfare. And so he said, I remember taking my mother took my grandmother to the Indian agent to collect her check, and they would put white flour on their faces so they would look white. And he said they look purple because you put the white on the, and he said they look purple. I wondered as a child where they were going. And so the Indian agent would basically taunt them with the check till grandmother cried, and then they would give her check.
Wow.
And I heard those stories, and I heard about the Salvation Army was the only Salvation Army that would come with bags of clothing and baskets of food and this kind of thing at Christmas and Easter. And then I also heard about, he said, when I went to school, I was the same as everybody else in the spring because I could wear rubber boots, the same as everybody else, because the rest of the year I still wore the rubber boots. So I heard these stories over and over and over again, and and then of course he never met his mother till he was 28 years old, and we were in Edmonton. He said my mother lives here somewhere, and I said let's go. I'd like to meet her. So I reconnected their parents together, him and his mom together. And that's how I became connected to the Métis society, is because of the fact that I understood, and I was able to understand the way that these people had lived with all of these disconnections to who they were as people. And then his auntie had been kicked in the head by a horse. And so they decided to take her to see a medicine man. The medicine man said, in order for me to treat her, she has to stay with me in the tent. And the uncle had to sleep on the outside of the tent. And so, don't you know, she became pregnant. And so now the child and the mother, of course, were sent away. His auntie were sent away to have the child. To this day, they don't even know where that child went.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah, it's
I heard stories over and over again, Lewis, and that's basically through all of this is basically how I really became connected with these people and their lifestyle. They did horses, and so I of course was interested with horses because my father was a horseman. So therefore I became interested in the Métis and the horse and their activities. And then I want to meet a medicine man, and they said there's bad medicine here. So I wanted to make that better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Now, did you ever know John Charles?
Yes.
Oh, he was my hero. He still is my hero.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Can you say a little bit about John Charles?
Yes. I think that basically, you know, I think that it's our responsibility, I think, to be the example and to lead these people to a better life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I think through the way that we carry ourselves as human beings is the way that we, it's part of reconciliation as well. With,
Yeah, I think you're
with
right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So, so, um, so tell us some stories about working with herbs, your practice.
Working with whom?
Working with herbs, your practice, herbal
Oh,
medicine.
I basically, in August of this year, I took homeschool children into the bush. There was 12 children and their parents, and so we identified plants. I gave them each a paper bag, and we collected herbs. And it rained all day, but at the end of the day, about 3:30, the bottom was falling out of the bags. But
Mm,
they collected berries and they collected different plants, and then basically they were so happy. We had a side by side, and we all ate our dinner outside in the rain. And then about 3:30 they brought shovels, and so we did sand castles. And then these little children were so happy that the 12-year-old in the mix phoned me one day, and he said, when are you going to take me picking blueberries? So this basically, they came to my workplace, and they said to me, it's really important to us to learn how to live in the wild and how to be able to connect the plants, and also the doctrine of signatures. So I taught these little children how the signature of the plant is related to the organs of our body. And so they were really enthused and interested because it's something they didn't do at their school. So now the Homeschool Association is looking at making this part of the curriculum.
wow,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
yeah. Now tell us about your work with the College of Medicine. I know
Mhm.
it's sometimes difficult, sometimes touch and go, and it's really two-eyed seeing
Yes.
because you're the other eye that they're not always sure that they want.
Right. So,
But
so where I've been involved with the dean, of course, who basically took me out for lunch at Boffin's and said to me, what do you sell? And I said, I don't sell anything. I basically, make tinctures or gather my plants and then make medicines, or I refer to various herbals in health food stores. And so therefore, then I created a relationship with the College of Medicine through the dean. And then now we have functional medicine. And so now I have medical students in my clinic that come to do a practicum in my clinic.
wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool. So
Uh-huh.
they get to learn about herbal medicine.
Right. And also, what I did is I basically, in 2002, I had medical students. And so I got them to write a report of what they observed when they were in my clinic, and what they saw, the relationship between clients and illness, and a place to come that was safe, And also, it's very professional because of the fact that a lot of these people come to a half-hour clinical setting, whereas if they see a physician, it's the Minuteman. They're only there for 7 minutes if they're lucky.
Right, right. Isn't that terrible?
Mhm.
It's so, I
Yeah.
don't, it's all about capitalism, I suspect.
And so, therefore, I think that, in my 61 years of practice, I've been on both sides. And so now, I attended the last conference in August of the medical conference in Saskatoon. And so there's a physician from in Quebec, from the University of Montreal, that came to speak about chronic pain in his chronic pain clinic. And so he talked about using ashwagandha and some of the herbals in towards chronic pain. And so we now have a chronic pain clinic here in Saskatoon with functional medicine. And so I'm able to refer to them. So I'm really happy about that.
That's great. That's so wonderful. Well,
Mhm.
so could you tell us about some of your really interesting cases with, you know, successes with herbal medicine?
Right. I have a fellow in that basically has prostate cancer. And so I've treated him for probably 2 years now. And so the specialist has said that he's the only um, individual that's still alive and I gave him a very rigid eating plan and then also some herbal medicines. And so therefore he's writing his story now.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So he
Yeah.
asked if he could use my name. Yeah.
How about that?
Mm-hmm. So, and then also, I think the thing is doctor. There's a physician here in Saskatoon that sends people for ear candling because of the fact that these people have a lot of ear problems and hearing problems. So
Mhm.
this Dr. Prasad sends people over to me. I've also worked with Dr. Prasad, the cardiologist in Saskatoon, and he and I met and did a house call together, and we basically saw an individual that had a lot of heart murmurs, that kind of thing. So I used hawthornberry and some of the other herbals with some of the cardiology medicine that he prescribed.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's a wonderful example of two-eyed seeing, using the herbal medicine and the cardiology medicine at the same time.
right. So one rule of thumb when you use herbal medicines and Western medicine is 2 hours on either side of the medicine, of the Western medicine, that you can use herbals.
Mm.
There's sort of a relationship there.
Well, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of people, pick up a magazine or go to the health food store, but they don't know how to administer the supplements.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, and it it can be confusing because every continent has its own herbs.
I
And
agree.
so, yeah. And so one can do, I mean, there's Chinese herbs,
Yes,
there's Ayurveda, Indian herbs,
yes,
and then there's our herbs from North America.
right,
Of course, there's herbs from Europe and
right.
Africa. And I I think it can be really confusing. I mean, for myself, I try to stick to North American herbs.
Mm-hmm.
I think we live here and my wife Barbara has made an amazing project here on our um, land
Mm-hmm.
of trying to grow medicine. And she's succeeded in growing sweetgrass, which
Right.
I think is very impressive. He's,
Mm-hmm. Tinctures with sweetgrass as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we're so excited because
Mm-hmm.
sweetgrass is hard to grow.
Sure. And there's also a spiritual side to sweetgrass. So if you
Mhm.
look at the base of the sweetgrass, that's a baby when the baby is first born. And then it basically, as you grow older, it basically gets larger. And then as you get older and to be an elder, it gets thinner on the end.
Mm,
And then you create a tie. And then that's when you let go.
wow. And here in Maine, the story is that sweetgrass is the herb of compassion
Yes,
because when you step on it, it bounces right back up,
that's right.
unlike the other grasses.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've used sweetgrass in our lodges when people are upset or
Right.
anxious or grieving, because it's so calming. So,
Sure did. There's a fellow in Montreal that's native, and he also formulated a liquid spray with sweetgrass, with sage, with all the four sacred herbs, tobacco, and it took him 3 years to come up with this formula. And so I used it with a First Nations fellow from the First Nations University of Canada. He had to have a kidney removed, so I used sprayed some on his pillow before surgery.
wow. How
Yeah,
about that? How did that go?
it very well. It's called innovation is the name of the herb of the formula, and it's a spray, and it works like a charm.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get some of that because sometimes we do workshops in hotels
Right,
where we can't burn anything. And
right,
so it would be great to have some spray. You
exactly. Now the elders basically kind of frown on it because they feel that it's not in its natural, a natural plant. But when you're in a hospital setting, or when I think that you don't have a choice.
No, you don't because we're serfs, eh,
I know.
slaves.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
have to like kowtow to the authorities.
Is it? Yes, but I've used that spray a lot because I feel that sometimes if people are tense or and people have left my clinical setting and with negative energy, I just spray it in the room.
Yeah, that's great. We've used squirty sage before.
Yes,
Yeah, and when we can't, burninate.
right. There's also a sweetgrass essential oil as well that I use from the native store here in Saskatoon, and so therefore it's and then I put it on candles and I just leave it in the room.
There's a sort of border war on sweetgrass,
Of
which of course it grows on both sides of the border.
course it
But
does.
yeah, but my wife was driving across the border, Quebec to Vermont, and the border people just freaked out because she had some sweetgrass. And she said, but it grows on both sides of the border. And they said, but it's not American sweetgrass.
Okay.
I don't know that the sweetgrass knows which country it belongs to.
I know, but it's the spiritual effect, and people at the border don't understand the spirituality of a plant,
No, no, they don't.
and that think if there would have been a native person at the border, they would have understood.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the spirituality of the plant.
right. And it's hard to find native people at borders.
Exactly, but it's not downtown religion. That's why.
Right, right. Although, a funny story, the only way I got my truck into Saskatchewan from Montana was to have an indigenous woman, whose reserve was on both sides of the Montana Saskatchewan border, drive it across with the border agents being her high school classmates.
But it was also a red truck.
It was a red truck. You're right. It
That's
was a red truck.
yes, it's the spirituality of the red truck.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
I remember that.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes. And now I have a blue truck. So
I see. Okay.
it's the
Well,
sky.
blue is the color of the Virgin Mary, you see. So it has that, is the color of the chakras.
Mm, mm.
So it has
Yeah.
some, yeah.
I always think about blue as well, I'm just attached to the sky when I think about blue.
Exactly.
But I didn't really have a choice because I bought it during COVID and it was the only truck available.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, funny thing. I
Mhm.
probably would have bought another red truck if I could have, but
There you go.
yeah,
That's the red, and it took you on the red road.
it did. It took me on the red road. Yes, yes, indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
So
Yeah,
the power of the story again.
again, yes, yes.
Mhm.
So, any stories about disappointment with your approach? Like who does tell us about a story for someone that you couldn't help, because I
Yes.
that's always important.
That's right. I think that basically it's a negativity. And so I basically had a gentleman who basically came to my clinic, and I'll never forget it. And he came to my clinic, and he was a farmer. And I started talking to him. I said, "So, how's your seeding? How's your farming going?" And he said to me, he said, "You pay." He said, "I pay you." He said, "I pay you for your services. You pay me for mine."
Wow.
So I said to him, I said, fine. So then I started talking about health and, trying to make conversation. And so I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere with this gentleman. So I basically said to him, and then that was the day, don't you know, I forgot my receipt book. So anyway, I said to him, and so anyway, I said to him, but I will send you the receipt in the mail. And he said to me, he said, I suppose you don't pay income tax anyway. That's why you didn't bring your receipt book. So
Wow.
I said, definitely. I said, I will make sure that I get your receipt. So I got home and I basically I said to him before he left, I said, I think you may be happier someplace else because you're not happy with me. So therefore, I got home. I drove an hour from South to Saskatoon, and then I went straight downstairs, got my receipt book, wrote him a receipt, and I write paid in full. Walked to the mailbox, put it in the mailbox, and let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I told the receptionist, if this gentleman calls, please tell him that I'm booked quite a lot in advance
Mhm. Right.
because
Oh,
you don't need to have this negativity.
no. And isn't it interesting that what people have to bring to the encounter for healing? That that I wonder if you could talk about this, because a lot of elders have told me that in order to be healing, you have to sacrifice something. You have to
Exactly.
give something of yourself.
Of
And
course.
in the Sundance, we give our flesh,
Right.
and in order for ourselves and our families and our communities
Right.
to
But
heal.
I see it, Lewis, as a sharing because the
Mm.
fact I think they put us up on pedestals. And the higher you're up on the pedestal, the farther you have to fall. So I believe that basically we attract other people by word of mouth because I don't advertise anywhere. And so by word of mouth, I think that that's the power of the orifice. It's power of the mouth. It's power of the thought, power of the mind, power of thinking. And I think that when we basically have helped other people, they will do the hunting and the gathering for us.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
as a result of that, then basically they come to us and we share that I am not frail. I am not without frailties, and I'm a human being, and I like to throw some humor in there, and I like to basically um, share with people that we have students of learning. We're basically been around for a day or two. Our certificates basically attract people. They get people in the door. After that, it's about us.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so as a result of that, it's attraction rather than promotion.
Right, right. So just an interesting story that I'd enjoy your comments on. Once upon a time, I used to spend time with a Cherokee elder named Hawk Littlejohn.
Mhm,
And once upon a time, I went with him to see a woman in the hospital at the University of North Carolina.
mhm.
And she was very wealthy. And he walked into the room and she proceeded to ask him to heal her. And he said, well, you're going to have to sacrifice something. And she said, well, money is no object. I have more than you could imagine. And he said, I don't want your money. He said, I want you to do one selfless act for someone else, and then I'll work with you. And um, as far as I know, she never did. She
And
could,
pass it on. Pass it on.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm. Yep.
yeah. And of course, I mean, I have to add, I always have to add to this story that Hawk was married to a professor of internal medicine, University of North Carolina. So
Good.
he probably didn't need money,
Yes.
in the way that many elders need money.
Yes, they do. I work with an elder from Slave Lake, Alberta. He and I were inducted to the Herbal Order of Canada together. He came to me and said, Do you speak Cree?" And I said, "No. Do you speak French?" And so we've gotten along ever since. So we call each other every month. And so basically, though, he presented me with a feather at a celebration, and he said to me, he said these very words. He said, "Don't ever fly away."
Oh my, how wonderful. That's so great.
And then I worked with a medicine man out of Duck Lake, Saskatchewan. And one of the things he said to me, he said, "We don't treat our own."
Mm,
Because I asked him, "Why do you bring me your wife?" And he said, "Because we don't treat our own."
yeah, yeah.
So they
Uh,
have their protocols and that we need to honor because of the fact that your children don't listen to you, your wife doesn't listen to you, your husband doesn't listen to you, so you're frustrated and it creates that animosity.
Well, when I was living in Tucson, Arizona, before I came to
Mhm.
Saskatchewan, a, a number of elders down there, Yaqui and Tohono, brought me family members to work with for the
Yeah,
same reason, because they said, we can't treat our family. They
right,
won't listen to us.
right, exactly. And so I learned that from experience, and it's tough to watch them suffer in their own way, but I think that's part of their path.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that's what they call pathology.
Right, right, right. Though I did learn down there that my remedy for gallstones was fairly successful. It
Yes.
was olive oil and lemon juice and apple cider vinegar.
Oh,
Yeah, and a
yeah,
couple of other herbs.
I know.
So I don't know. Do you have a remedy for gallstones?
Gallstones, yes, I do. It's basically called a liver gallbladder cleanse, and it's an herbal remedy that's basically put together by New Roots, the company from it's an herbal company, and it works like a charm. It basically takes about 2 months before the gallstones will basically gel, and then they'll pass through the bowel. But also, the liver is an organ of anger,
Hmm.
and then of course through the pathway it basically settles in the gallbladder. The gallbladder holds 1 cup, and so when the cup is run over, then basically it creates pain, but pain connects us to humanity.
Hmm. Yes.
And so as a result of that, the liver gallbladder cleanse is very, very helpful for these people, and it's workable and it's doable, but you don't wait until the horse is out of the gate before you go chasing the horse.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's preventative medicine.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what's interesting in French, that expression, ma foi.
Right. Yeah. My
Right.
my mom, that was her favorite before she started anything, ma foi. It was
Yeah.
it was her belief. And um people with gallstone issues have very hard core ideas.
Mm, mm.
They have to start releasing some of those hardcore ideas. So as a result of that, then you start dealing with the metaphysical causations of dis-ease.
Yes, you do. Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. And and um and it's interesting because conventional medicine has no grasp at that these things work and they're possible, and their only solution is semi-surgical.
Right.
It's sad, really. I mean,
It is, but people can't get to see a physician, so we're reaping the benefits of that.
right. Doctors are hard to find.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm over the top. I mean, I'm booking it to January already. And it's interesting because I have a cancellation list and then I've got my own every daily list.
Hmm.
So for I see it as it comes from the spiritual aspect of, you know, physicians need to learn the lesson. And if they don't learn the lesson, they'll learn the lesson till they've learned the lesson.
Right. Right. And it's so interesting that it's so hard to take a two-eyed seeing approach for
Yeah.
physicians. It's so one-sided,
Mm-hmm.
like drugs, drugs, drugs,
Yes.
and not even lifestyle, barely.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
um,
But
and
people expect that, Lewis. When they come to a clinical setting, if they leave without a pill or a piece of paper, they feel that they failed.
right, right.
So I always instill in people it's not about cost. It's not about taking a pill. It's about taking a look at your inner self.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's an inside job, I call it.
Right. So can you speak a little more about the spirituality that's inherent in all of this?
Of course, because the right side of your body is your masculine side of your body. The left side of your body is your feminine side of the body. So, therefore, right away through iridology, I'm able to tell if it's a masculine issue that these people have, or is it a feminine issue that they have. They think I'm a witch, but basically all it is knowing the anatomical relationship of the body. And so as a result of that, you start saying, okay, so whom in your life do you have a difficult situation with? Is it a father? Is it a mother? Is it a child? A death of a child? Is it a loss? And then they start sharing, or they go home and they'll think about this, and the next visit they'll come back and they say, do you remember when we talked about this and that, the next thing? And so it's a matter, I think, of knowing. It's a spiritual knowing. and
Hmm.
and so by knowing the way that the body, and it's in the two eyes, it's the two eyes seeing. And
Hmm.
so that's why I was really excited when you came up with this kind of an analogy, because it relates to the kind of work that I do. And
Hmm.
so people, and then I suggest maybe they start with journaling. I suggest they maybe go to counseling if their workplace has a plan that will cover that. And so once people do that, you can see them flourish, you can see them get better, and their health situation gets better. It's not
Right.
about pill.
Hmm. Hmm.
And of course, yeah, when I relate to people and I say every orifice of your body is circular.
True.
Yeah,
Very good point.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So therefore, I think you have to look from birth in the womb. So maybe perhaps if it's a single mother or the child was born out of wedlock, all these issues began in the womb.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we have to do some rebirthing. We have to go back into the spirituality of, was it traumatic birth? Was it, what happened at birth? Who were in the room? Who was in the room when all this birthing took place?
Hmm.
And so every culture has, I assist birthing as well in Saskatoon. And I assisted with people from India, a woman from India. And it was really interesting because after the birth, I walked her and walked her and walked her because I did not want her to have an epidural. And so we walked and we walked and we walked. But anyway, at the end of the day, after the birth was over, I saw them come in with two shopping bags, and I thought, "What is this?" But I never paid attention. And then after the birth, they spread the tablecloth out on the bed. They put a little cusp of a silver cup with water in it from the Ganges River, a nice little cube of sugar, and then with a little spoon, they gave the baby a little drop of the water, and then the mother drank the rest. And
Wow.
then and then they took out food and they put it all over the table and or the bed on the bedspread and the tablecloth. And then they said to me, if you don't want to eat our food, maybe you could call Starbucks. And I said, it's 1:17 in the morning. I said, I have to get up and go to work in the morning, but thank you for your offer. And so that's such a spiritual experience. Where else in the world can you get that kind of an experience?
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
That is so amazing.
So every culture basically, and of course the native women in birthing, they used to ride horseback and then they'd take off in the bush by themselves, have their baby and have a blanket, and then take the baby to the water, bath the baby in the cold water, and then wrap the baby and then get in on their horse and away they go.
Wow. So that was what they did in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, that's the history of birthing with the native women. But now we've basically medicalized these people.
Hmm.
And so as a result of that, then therefore, we've basically weakened the native community by basically ignoring their culture, ignoring their beginnings.
Right, right, right. It's that um universalization that medicine does,
Yeah,
where it eliminates culture and diversity and
yeah,
implements one size fits all
yeah,
approach to
right.
everything. Yeah.
The other thing too, Lewis, is basically they're so quick with their epidurals.
Oh, yes.
And so I walk and I walk and I walk with them, and basically create communication and create a relationship with these people. I had another woman who basically said, I cannot sit in this hospital. So she got a pass and away she went. I tried phoning her, and her and her husband walked to the 7-Eleven. And I said, you can't be doing that. You're going to have your baby at the 7-Eleven. But so basically, then the next time she had another pregnancy and she had twins. And I said, this time you're not leaving my site because you don't need to be going in the middle of the street having these babies. But it's really interesting because the babies were in my presence. And so now they come to see me and they travel from a community called Martinsville out of Saskatoon. And they're in the back seat and they say, my Flo. And the other one says, no, it's my Flo. you know? And so
Wow.
it's that communication that you have in the womb with the child and the people around them. And I like to share that story a lot because I remember doing 3 house calls to see how they were functioning. And my husband came pick me up and she looked up at my husband. She said, so which one are you taking home? And so, we have that communication that no other person in the world has had that experience.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about this whole long COVID thing that people are talking about?
Okay, I use andrographis. Andrographis is an herb that I've used for the after effects of COVID. I've never had COVID myself. I've never, in the last 11 years, I've been in the same clinical setting and I've never been sick. And I'm exposed to people this far away from their faces. but I think that basically a lot of it is on the inherent strength of the body,
Mm,
and so when you have a virus, you have to explain to me the effects of a virus medically. I understand that, but the other thing I don't understand is the fact that it's a the body is going through a cleansing process.
mhm,
So it basically takes some time because some people are stronger of spirit, stronger of mind, stronger in body, stronger in everything that they do. But I think they just need that extra time to experience their body. It's an inside job.
mhm, mhm.
And so antigraphis works really, really well in a tincture form or as an herbal form, and strengthens the immune system. So I use olive leaf extract. Olive leaf is the oldest tree in the world, the olive tree. And I basically use olive leaf from fall to spring. And then I don't use it in the summertime to strengthen my immune system. So we have an immune system that is damaged
Mhm,
and
mhm.
can't fight it.
Right,
So
right.
that's why I use those two herbs and vitamin C, of course. Dr. Men basically used vitamin C, and so I saw him run at the back of the from the back of the room to the front of the room. He was 80 years old and he was taking mega doses of vitamin C, so it's never killed him. And
Hmm.
so I think that we basically have lost our own self. We've lost our it's like fibromyalgia, for instance. It's a catch-all.
Right, right, right.
And so people live the diagnosis.
They do, don't they?
Yeah. So I,
Yes,
I look
yes.
at the metaphysical causation of the person that stands in front of me, because a lot of times it's their own damage that they've done to themselves.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
there's the blaming, there's the fear, there's a lot of emotions involved in this part.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think COVID is amazing because it reminds me of what I read about the Black Plague in Europe
Yeah,
in the Middle Ages, that that people lived in the same household
yeah,
and some of them died and some of them had nothing happened to them.
exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you take a look in the biblical days, it is basically Jesus healed the lepers
Hmm.
by
Right.
touch. So that's how I had a Presbyterian minister come to me because he was a little leery about who I was. And basically, so I said to him, I says, you're a man of the cloth. You should understand that Jesus healed the lepers.
And what did he say?
Quiet. And so he basically had a lot of difficulty. But then, these people basically should be living by the book.
Hmm,
But yeah, that they're human.
hmm,
There's a lot of human attributes to the individual.
hmm.
And everyone has lived, like you said a minute ago, a story. Everyone has lived an experience.
Right,
And
right.
so I think that it's forgiveness that they need for their behavior.
Hmm.
But we as people basically are so busy, we have to do some archaeological work in order to find out who we really are. And we've neglected to do that.
Right.
I'm a human archaeologist, I always say. I keep digging and digging and digging until I find what I want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, so what are your thoughts about this sort of um quasi-fascist turn in the world where um like in the United States with Donald Trump and Italy with their leader and the growth of the Nazi movement in Germany
Mm-hmm.
and of course Marine Le Pen in France.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think that's all about?
Well, I think that someone has to be the example. And some examples are worthy, and other examples are basically, you know, if you mention Donald Trump, he basically went to visit the Pope, and he went to church on Easter Sunday. Well, that doesn't make you a Catholic.
No.
You have to live it. You have to be the example. And so, you know, it befuddles me to see that basically people are leaders of a country and have that behavior. And I think that basically, if you behave in such and such a way, you're going to attract people that think the way that you do.
Yes. Yes.
And so, you know, I was raised in a convent. I was raised in the Wild West, and I try to meet the middle.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's how I like to live my life, and sometimes I live on the edge too.
Well, I'm listening to a book on Audible by Francois Reynal. It's called La Grande Histoire du Monde.
Oui.
And today I was listening to Yvonne the Terrible, and um, and just it's just amazing how badly people can treat each other.
Yes. Yes.
It is just astonishing and astounding,
Mm-hmm.
and sobering. I mean, so disturbing how
Right.
people can treat each other. Yvonne the Terrible saw
Mm-hmm.
everyone as his slave.
Yeah.
All of its subjects were his slave. And Catherine the Great was not much better, I
No.
learned today.
No. Well, look at Henry VIII.
Ah, right, right, right.
Oh, and there's lots of examples of Henry VIII around.
Yes. It's well, it's so disturbing that
Mm-hmm.
how we can treat each other.
Right. But you see it happening in corporate worlds.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I basically admire the Native communities. I go to four different reserves, and the way that they treat people is just amazing to me, because they'll even, I remember going to Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan, and the first time, and they gave us their bed to sleep in.
Mm.
How many white communities would do that?
Right, right.
And so I saw that happen. They share their food. Everything is a feast for them.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know and that is so, and it's just so invigorating. I just attended a funeral of one of my chuck wagon drivers that was killed instantly. The ramp fell on him and killed him instantly. And there was a funeral, and they invited me to come to the funeral. And they brought me a mattress, and I slept at the wake for 2 days.
Mm. Wow.
And so spiritual for me. The food was, I mean, everyone brought food, everyone shared food.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so there was such a spirit, and there was 500 people at the funeral.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
this man was really venerated, and he was my very best friend as well, and
Mm.
his is as well. And so the family and the sons basically came to me, and one son said, how long are you staying? And the other one says, when are you leaving? you know and so they invited me into their community. And where else in the world do you get that treatment?
No, it's true. It's true. I've never been treated so well as in Indigenous communities.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think that keeps me saying that there's hope in the world.
Hmm.
And then the people that come to see me as clients, I see a lot of clients, and they wouldn't come to see you because they come to see you because they want to. They don't come to see you because they have to.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
there's a spirit to that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Yep.
And so everybody says, how come you're not retired yet? And I said, retired from what? you know. And then too, because I'm 80 years old now, they're basically, I said I've never met anyone that's lived forever. And that's what Willie Nelson always says. And he's my nemesis because we share the same birthday.
Oh my. How
Yeah,
about, yeah.
I love the man because the spirituality of that man, and his last song is called I'm the Last Leaf on the Tree.
No kidding. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
There's
Yeah.
a spirit to all of this.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's probably time for us to stop, but
Okay.
I do want to reach out to you to see if we can schedule a French interview, which would be really fun to do.
It would. Now, the other thing I think that we need to talk about is I'm getting questions about how do I share the podcast with my community. Everybody
Oh,
wants to.
oh, we'll make it event. We'll figure that out. I'll talk. Jennifer is my tech person. I'll
Okay.
talk to Jennifer and we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be easy for you to do.
Well, not only that, but the people in Saskatchewan miss you, so they'll get to see you, and
Oh,
they get to.
yes, I miss them too.
Yeah.
I wish, if I could come back,
Mhm.
I would come back.
Yeah. Is there a waiting time for you to come back?
No, no, I can travel freely now. I got my U-turn charge
Yeah.
expunged.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
no, if I could figure it out, if I could, I'd need some kind of work to do.
yeah.
But if I could figure it out, I would be back. And I,
Okay.
I know my wife would love to come back to
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing is the January conference. When how's that going to work?
Well, we can just play this video,
Okay.
or if you want to be live, we can do that either. Also,
Okay. So then I don't have any other preparation to do
no,
for the conference in January.
no,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, this video will be perfect. If you want to be live, also you can.
Okay.
Okay,
You're so special. Thank you very much.
all right. Well, thank you.
My husband died a year ago. I have to tell you this story before we leave. My husband died a year ago, and so I have young people, and a lot of people say to me, "Are you going to look for another husband?" And I said, "No. From now on, I'm going to borrow."
Very good.
Yeah. Anyway, all the best.
All the best. All right. Talk to you later. Okay. Bye bye.